Welcome to Fix My Hog, Hogger How-To DVD series. Your complete guide to Harley-Davidson motorcycle maintenance and performance. This comprehensive collection of DVDs is your all-in-one tool for keeping your ride on the road, giving you everything you need to truly know thy hog. With step-by-step, in-depth instruction, you can save yourself time and money, no matter your wrenching skills. Whether you're the hands-on type or just want to know, Fix My Hog's master mechanics are here to show you what it takes to properly maintain, tune up, tear down, and customize your Harley. Touring, soft tan, dyno, sportster, classics old and new. Let the Hogger How-To DVD series be your guide to a better ride.
To start this basic service, you want to remove the seat, to access the battery, to do a thorough charging system check. With the seat removed, you want to put your voltmeter leads, red to positive, black to negative. When you turn this ignition switch on, you're going to have to hit that handlebar, what's known as the rocker switch. Wait for the engine indicator light to go off in the speedometer before you start the motorcycle to check the battery charging system. The Harley-Davidson charging system is not an excited field charging system as seen in the automobile industry. It is a permanent magnet spun off the end of the crankshaft dictated by engine RPM. When spinning, it makes direct AC voltage, which is then converted, regulated, and rectified through your regulator rectifier. Output should be no more than 14.8 volts DC to the battery. Without a battery being 100% charged, there is no reason to check the charging system because the battery could be the failure point. Indicator lights off, start the motorcycle.
Yes.
As you can see, return voltage on this particular motorcycle is 14.2 volts DC. This is correct. If this voltage were to be 14.8, you would have an overcharging condition. If it did not quite reach 14 volts, you would have an undercharging condition. Both of these conditions require a charging system, either repair or maintenance, that goes beyond basic service. Once you're done with this procedure, we like to make a habit of putting an external battery charger on the battery. It not only replenishes what you did during the charging system test, but it gives you good peace of mind that the battery is fully charged after the service is complete. After the charging system check, remove the negative cable from the frame. We do this so you don't disturb the lead threads on your battery. Once those threads are disturbed, the battery is rendered useless. Pull back the cable, wrap it in a clean cloth, electrical tape we prefer. Make sure it touches ground nowhere. This disengages the entire electrical system from the motorcycle for your safety. This is a pneumatic lift. I highly recommend you strap the motorcycle to the lift. Once this type of lift is in the air, I strongly recommend putting the lock down in the rear. That's going to secure that motorcycle, and then release the air so the motorcycle's sitting on the lock, not on the piston. Remove oil tank dipstick. Wipe it thoroughly clean, set it aside. The reason for this is that you know the engine oil has been drained on the motorcycle and it must be refilled before the dipstick's reinstalled. Remove the transmission dipstick. Same procedure. Wipe it clean and set it aside. This not only allows adequate ventilation for thorough draining, but lets you know that the transmission is empty at this point. On the left side of the motorcycle, we're going to start by draining the clutch system, also known as the primary drive. Primary drain, engine oil drain, transmission drain up between the shock assemblies. It's a torque style plug. Use common sense, use good quality torques. Nothing worse than a broken bit into a blind hole plug. Drain pan naturally underneath. It holds about 1.5 quarts of oil. This operation you want to do with the motorcycle cold. The fluid, when it's hot, naturally can scald. Next, we want to remove the oil filter. It is not a cartridge style. It is a one-piece spin-on style filter. Do not use this type of spanner wrench. Due to the fact when loosening or tightening the filter, this type of wrench can snap off the crankcase sensor. Always use this style strap wrench. Much easier to work with and guaranteed no problems when loosening or reinstalling the oil filter. Spin filter completely off of engine crankcase. Allow the rest of the filter mount to drain completely. Clean crankcase surface with brake cleaner only. Do not use carb cleaner, it will disturb the black wrinkle finish. This is oil filter reinstallation. Naturally, it's a brand new oil filter. Fill the oil filter halfway. You don't need to fill it right to the top due to the fact you're going to hold it horizontal to re-thread it onto the crankcase. Take a little bit of the oil and wipe the O-ring so you get a nice sealing contact surface. Horizontally, you're going to pop the oil filter. Try and do it quickly. You don't need to spill any more than necessary. Thread it until the O-ring just mates to the crankcase. Half a spin more is more than sufficient. The heat from the engine crankcase will swell the O-ring and cause a nice seal. The next step is to remove the two covers on the outer primary. The round dirty, the oblong inspection cover. Both of them are retained with torque style T27 fasteners. We remove these two covers to allow adequate ventilation and quick drainage during the service. The smaller oblong cover of the two is the inspection cover, which will expose the primary drive chain. Note there's 2 bolts are long, 2 bolts are short. Please note location when removing them so they're installed in the proper locations. Don't lay these covers down on the chrome surface. Always lay them down on the oil side surface. These 2 gaskets, the gasket behind this oblong cover and the O-ring behind the round derby cover or clutch cover, must be replaced with new pieces each and every time you service this motorcycle. This is going to be clutch adjustment. You're going to take it, remove it from the plastic holder on the frame. What you want to do is get a little bit of lubricant. We prefer WD-40 down this rubber boot. This not only makes removal of the boot easier, but keeps the threads on the 2 lock nuts, which Mark will expose in a minute, lubricated. You don't have a tendency to have them break off in your hand. I want you to also note that the front fender on the motorcycle is covered at this point. Anytime you're working above, around, or near any painted surfaces, we prefer to keep them covered. He's cracking the 9/16 and a 1/2 inch nut loose. Render the 9/16 nut all the way to the top of the thread, then render the 1/2 inch adjuster screw all the way to the top of the thread. At this point, you're going to find that the lever has excessive free play in it. Push the lever all the way to the bars and leave it there. Now you want to walk up, you're going to loosen your 11/16 lock nut. Correct. You're also going to thread that out to the end of the thread. It leaves you room to work. You're going to go in, you're going to install the 7/32 Allen, back it all the way out. Back it, push it all the way in until you see deflection in the diaphragm spring. At that point, come back off until you feel no tension. When you feel no tension, you want to come off a full turn. Render the outside 11/16 nut back into the contact plate and lock it down with the 11/16 socket. Always point the ratchet downhill. Again, you're dealing with soft chrome surfaces. You don't want them scarred. Once that nut is locked down, you'll return to the adjuster mechanism. You will take the lower half-inch adjuster mechanism, take up all the free play in it. At this point, you want to engage and disengage the hand lever a minimum of 3 times while holding out on the clutch cable. This will show that the clutch is functioning properly. If you feel you've done it correctly, render the 9/16 lock nut back down onto the half-inch mechanism. Lock them down firmly. No more lubrication will be needed at this time because the inside of the rubber boot should have retained enough. Slide the boot back down over the adjusting mechanism. Install it back into the black plastic clip on the frame. It is just a plastic clip. Don't muscle it. What we're going to do here is check clutch cable free play. This is to verify that you have proper adjustment on the clutch pack. What you want to do is hold tension outward on the cable, rock the lever inward and outward gently. You should have approximately 1/16 free play. Depending on rider preference, it can be a little more, it can be a little less. That is going to dictate where the clutch will grab on the motorcycle's operation. In the next step, we'll go through primary chain adjustment. The indicator points to the primary adjuster shoe. The indicator now points to the 9/16 lock nut, which will hold tension on the primary chain. You want to feel that chain tension. Your spec will be in your service manual. Critical part of this adjustment is that the battery negative cable is not only loosened, but removed from the battery. This is a drive system. Bodily injury can occur during a misfire of the starting system. This is basic Harley-Davidson primary drive. With the cover removed, you can see your primary chain, your primary adjuster shoe, clutch basket, starter ring gear, diaphragm spring. You're already familiar with the clutch adjuster nut. When I remove the spring diaphragm plate, and I'm going to remove the center adjuster, laid out on the bench like this here, you can see it's actually a 3-piece assembly. The adjuster plate that you're familiar with, the center push rod, which would run through the main shaft of the transmission, the end push rod, which has an oil slinger and a throwout bearing. The oil slinger is necessary due to keeping well lubrication on the throwout bearing. The throwout bearing is actuated by a conventional ball and ramp system. This ball and ramp is installed in your transmission end cover. Your clutch cable would insert here. As you pull your clutch cable, the ball and ramp would actuate. This actuation process pushes the throwout bearing and in turn the long push rod and your clutch adjuster plate. By pushing the adjuster plate outward, you physically flex the spring diaphragm. With this diaphragm flexed outward, your clutch would be disengaged. When you release your clutch lever, the diaphragm would return to a normal position and engage the clutch plates. This is what makes up the common 99 and newer Harley-Davidson clutch. It'll start with a fiber and end with a small drive fiber. In between each and every one, there will be what's known as a steel drive plate. This particular clutch runs in a bath of oil. I'm going to stand these on end so you get a nice clean view of the sides. The engagement dogs, as they're known, run to the outside of the clutch basket. The actual drives engage to the clutch hub. When they're all connected, they give you forward motion. Back towards the primary chain area. When you do primary adjustment, this is the 9/16 nut you're loosening. As you're doing your primary chain adjustment, this shoe will move upward to tension the chain, or can be allowed to slacken to pick up a little more free play in the chain. This spec for free play in the chain is to be done at the loose spot and to be done cold to factory specifications found in the service manual. This is what's known as a Harley-Davidson compensating sprocket assembly. This is the shaft extension, splined internally and externally. This comes directly off the crankshaft of the twin cam engine. When installed, this allows the slider cam assembly to take up the torque of the engine. Without this particular item, the likelihood of any of this drive system staying together long would be slim. And the last thing I wanted to touch base on, this is Harley-Davidson's primary gasket. It's an aluminum material with a silicone coating. Alright, we're going to clean these plugs. We want to not only clean the outer surface, we also want to clean the threaded surface where the O-ring and where the thread engages into the case. You want to remove the O-ring naturally. You want to use brake cleaner, not carburetor cleaner, due to the corrosiveness of carburetor cleaner. Brake cleaner is much more mild. Once you're done with the cleaning process and the threads are dry, you want to reinstall the O-ring. You want to use Teflon paste. You want to avoid using plumber's type Teflon tape due to the fact that if a piece of the tape breaks away from the plug, the tape can plug many small passages that are involved in the Harley-Davidson drivetrain. The magnetic surfaces should also be made very clean. That way you can monitor any loose debris that's floating either in the engine, transmission, or in the primary drive, also known as the clutch drive area. The two larger drain plugs you see are oil and transmission drains. The smaller plug is a Torx T40 style and is used on the outer primary to drain the clutch fluid. With the drain plug reinstalled, you'll refill the outer primary with the proper amount of clutch fluid per factory specifications. This is going to be Harley's Derby cover O-ring update. The existing stock O-ring will be removed and left out, replaced by this new composite gasket, clearly marked. The O-ring is left out. The gasket is put in its place. The cover is reinstalled and torqued to factory specifications. The 5T27 Torx will be tightened in a star pattern and then torqued to factory specifications. Again, found in your factory, and I stress factory service manual. The reason for a star pattern on tightening this cover is to avoid warpage. At this point, you'll use a new gasket on the inspection cover opening each and every time. Same applies for this small cover. Location is critical. 2 long bolts, 2 short bolts will only go in one way. The factory did not force it together when they assembled it. You shouldn't have to force it together when you reassemble it. Tighten in what's commonly known as a cross 4 or a star pattern, and torque to factory specifications found in your factory service manual. Star pattern is top, lower left. lower right, opposing left, and opposing right. This pattern is used only to draw the cover snug. Do not over tighten. Torque to factory specifications. The inspection cover will be top center, bottom center, left opposed, right opposed. With the covers back in place, refill the oil tank with factory specified engine lubricant. Make sure the dipstick is clean and that the O-ring is located in its proper position. Reinstall the dipstick into the oil tank and press down so that you know it's firmly seated into the tank. At this point, we want to fill the transmission. Again, we want to clean the threads on the dipstick. We want to inspect the O-ring, make sure it's in nice condition. Doesn't need to be replaced with every service, but does when it's worn. A light coat of Teflon paste, again, no tape. Reinstall the dipstick into the transmission end cover. Snug. Tighten and torque to factory specs. Always cover painted surfaces with a clean blanket. Use your 1 3/8" offset wrench to loosen top fork tube caps. There'll be no pressure behind these caps. Just loosen the cap and remove it completely from the fork assembly. Use a hand impact and a steel hammer with a Phillips bit to loosen the lower drain screw. Then use a Phillips screwdriver to remove the Phillips screw completely from the lower leg. There will be fluid pressure behind the screw, so be ready with your catch container to contain any fluid that drains from the lower leg. This procedure should be performed on both the left and right side fork assembly of the motorcycle. Before reinstallation of the fork tube caps and lower drain screw, both the top fork tube cap and the lower Phillips style drain screw will be cleaned with brake cleaner only, no carb clean. The rubber retaining gasket on the fork tube cap and the brass washer on the lower Phillips are replaceable items and must be replaced each and every time they are removed. Clean thoroughly and install both sealing washers and a light coat of Teflon on the clean threads. Reinstall lower Phillips into the lower slider assembly. This seals the new clean fork oil into the lower leg. Refill fork oil using factory specified fluids. Fill to correct level according to service manual. Reinstall top filler cap. Use caution not to cross threads. The old adage, a cross thread is a tight thread, does not apply. Finger tighten until it bottoms, then tighten top cap until metal crush washer contacts the top of the fork.